Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy to Heal. I'm Laura, I'm your host, and today we're answering one of the questions that I get almost every single week. What is Splankna? I wanted to do this episode because it's an amazing, quick episode to listen to if you are just curious about what Splankna is, if you've been considering doing a session, or if you're a practitioner and you are constantly explaining to people what Splankna is. I wanted to give you a concise resource to hand out to people so that they can have a deeper understanding of what this modality is all about. This episode is your crash course, okay? A clear, practical, faith-based explanation of what Splankna is, how it works, and how it might help you. So, what is it? Let's start really simple. Splankna is a Christian mind-body healing protocol that helps you get to the root of emotional symptoms, not just manage them. It's not tools. It's helping you get to the root. It's a structured process, so there's a very formulaic way of doing it, but it includes prayer, muscle testing, the body's memory systems, the authority of Jesus, and very specific steps to release stuck emotional energy. So when people ask me, is Splankna therapy or are you a therapist? My answer is no. It's not talk therapy at all. It's very, very different. It focuses more on the ability for, not even the ability, the tendency for the body to remember trauma along with the brain. It's acknowledging that we store trauma and memories and emotions in our body. So it's a mind and body protocol grounded in the Christian worldview, centered around the finished work of Jesus. That means we are completely trusting that Splankna is not the healer. Your practitioner is not the healer. It is just Jesus. So let's get into that part of it and get it just right on the table. Splankna is unapologetically very out in the open, Christ-centered. It assumes that Jesus is Lord, that He is the one that leads our inner healing by His authority. It believes that trauma is not just psychological, it has spiritual and energetic components to it as well. And freedom comes through the Holy Spirit, not through human willpower. Every session involves prayer. We ask the Holy Spirit to guide. We submit the whole session to Jesus. We end every release in His authority. Every session we end in prayer as well. So if someone is nervous and asks, okay, I don't know much about this, is this new age? The answer is for sure no. The protocol itself is firmly planted in Scripture, designed by Christians, and rooted in the belief that all healing ultimately comes from God. So let's talk about the mind-body connection, the place where emotions actually live. One of the biggest ideas behind Splankna is this: emotions don't just live in your mind, they live in your body. They're stored in different parts of your body. That's why your stomach drops when you get bad news, or your chest tightens when you're afraid. Your jaw can clench when you get upset. Your shoulders can get tense and kind of pulled up by your ears when you're overwhelmed. Your body remembers. Your body reacts to the emotion that you're feeling at the time. There's a very famous book called The Body Keeps the Score, and the title is the whole message. Your body remembers everything that you've been through. And when an emotion is too overwhelming, or you're just too young, or too unsupported, you feel very alone in an event, your body basically says, we're going to store this away for later. I can't handle this. I don't want to handle this. I don't know how. So I'm just going to shove it. I always tell my clients, when you feel an emotion, you can either continue to feel it and process it, or you can shove it. Those are your only two options. Shoving it is when the body says, we're going to store this for later. I can't process this now. I'll deal with it later. The problem comes when that later never comes, and then those stored emotions kind of turn out to be symptoms for you like anger or anxiety or outbursts or trouble sleeping or whatever it is. But Splankna calls these stored emotions trapped emotions. They sit in the body like little landmines or like a raw nerve that's inside of you that gets hit frequently. And here's the important part. When something in your present moment feels similar to the old wound, those old emotions fire off like a trigger. And you guys, this is a subconscious experience. You're not often consciously connecting, oh, wow, this feels like what happened to me when I was 4 years old. Your subconscious is, though, and you are most of the time completely unaware of it. You just know that in the moment, you flipped your lid about the tiniest little thing and you're like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get it together? You most of the time have no idea that subconsciously you made a connection of like, I've been here before when I was 4 years old and that did not end well for me. So all your fight or flight came up to the surface. So this is why people say things like, I know I'm overreacting, but I can't stop. I don't know why this situation makes me so anxious. This keeps happening and I don't know why. Because the truth is, consciously you don't know why, but subconsciously your body knows exactly why you're so anxious, exactly why you're overreacting. Splankna helps you locate those original events, the root moment, not the symptom. And it releases the stored emotional charge. That stuck emotion can get unstuck in a Splankna session. I want to talk briefly about how forgiveness fits into Splankna, because if you haven't done a session, this is going to be a part of your session. A huge part of Splankna is forgiveness, not forced forgiveness, not you just need to get over it forgiveness, or let's just pretend it didn't hurt and move on. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real forgiveness, because forgiveness breaks your connection, your tie to that person. It closes open doors that the enemy might have gotten access to you through. God teaches us to forgive because it sets us free. When we choose to exist in unforgiveness, the door to that old hurt, that old person, that pain, and to the enemy gets legal right to interfere in our life when we refuse to operate in God's way, which is forgiveness. Forgiveness also releases spiritual baggage off of you, and it restores your authority. God teaches us to forgive because he knows that it's for our benefit, our freedom. If there's a person who harmed you or a moment that wounded you, forgiveness is often the key that frees your system to heal. We are wired to forgive by God. And so when we refuse to cooperate with that wiring, to release that pain in person to Jesus, our body responds to that. And yeah, sometimes in Splankna, you have to forgive yourself. And sometimes we have to forgive God, not because he did something wrong, but because people often hold resentment towards him. We don't understand what he's doing. And especially when we were younger, it felt like he forgot about us, or it felt like he did something intentional to us. So in Splankna, forgiveness is one of the core tools that God uses to bring that emotional freedom. So what's the energy work part of Splankna? Let's talk about that, because it can sometimes feel mysterious for some people. When Christians hear the word energy, they sometimes get nervous because other people have used it in these kind of woo-woo, mysterious, or even new age type of ways. But think about it. Your heart is powered by electrical impulses. There's electricity that makes your heart beat. Your brain communicates with electrical activity. Your cells carry measurable frequencies. Frequency is just another word for being able to measure the energy going on in a cell. There are machines that can actually measure these things. This is just scientific fact. EKGs and EEGs that we go to the doctor to and get, those literally just measure energy patterns. God designed your body with energetic systems. If we have energy in our body, the only reason we have energy is because God designed it that way. It's not magic. It's not spiritual. It's not channeling anything. It is literally the design of our body, which, coming from a nurse's background, I can attest to that. Like, we learn on a basic level how a cell works, how the heart works. And I just want to demystify that word energy for anyone who's just kind of put off by it. It is not a spiritual term at all. Our body is made with it, and it's like the body's built-in wiring to access information that your conscious mind can't reach on its own. Because that leads us into the muscle testing part, which is also sometimes where people are like, whoa, what is this muscle testing thing? So let's get into that. Muscle testing is a tool that we use to ask the body questions, okay? So here's a way to explain it. Your body and your subconscious mind knows everything you've ever been through. It knows things that your conscious mind has forgotten. It knows what life was like for you the day you were born. It knows what life was like for you when you were 7. It knows exactly what life was like for you even when you were in the womb. And I know that's hard to wrap your head around, but it's true. When we test a muscle, we're looking for a slight change in strength that happens when your nervous system agrees or disagrees with something. Is it true or is it not true? It's like checking how your body responds to truth versus stress. So that would look like I would have you stick your arm straight out in front of you and tighten up that deltoid muscle just a little bit. So I have a little bit of something to push on, and I would just push gently on your wrist. When a muscle holds strong, I can push gently on your wrist and your arm doesn't really go anywhere. It's nice and firm. It holds the strength. When there is something in agreement, something true, that muscle that I'm testing will very briefly go weak and that arm will drop or dip, and that's it. Another way I explain this is like you have your conscious part of your brain that remembers what you did yesterday. It remembers who your friends are, what you ate for breakfast this morning. And then you have your subconscious that remembers everything you've ever been through, every detail of it, but you just can't pull files out of it like you can your conscious mind. But if you're using muscle testing and kind of asking these yes or no, true or not true type questions, you can access that part of your brain that's been like a computer and stored away everything you've ever been through your whole life. And it's not perfect. Muscle testing is not a perfect system, but it is kind of amazing how consistent and accurate it can be. I want to read to you just this probable Splankna testimony. And what I mean by that is it's not real, but it is, meaning this story, this person is not real, but this type of a scenario has happened countless times in every practitioner's office. Okay. So let's imagine a client named Emily. Emily was a 38-year-old mom who came to me because she kept having explosive reactions to really small things. One of her kids spilling milk would send her over the edge. She felt ashamed, and she didn't understand why she was reacting so big to something so small. During a session, her muscle testing, the body led us back to an event when she was 5 years old. So through muscle testing, you're able to find out the age of where does this emotional explosion symptom come from? And in a session, it comes back to 5 years old for this session named Emily. And she begins to tell me her father was an alcoholic, and she remembers one night she made a mess at dinner and he yelled at her. She remembers it still. And the emotion that was stored in her body from that memory, fear and helplessness. So we processed it in our Splankna session. We got those emotions unstuck, which, by the way, is a very simple process of just feeling the emotion instead of shoving it, giving it permission to be felt so it can kind of dissipate. She forgave her dad in the Splankna session. not excusing his behavior, but releasing the emotional bond to his behavior. And then by freeing those emotions, by feeling them, you're also releasing that stored energy or that stored emotion that connected you to that event. And listen, the next week she came back and said, guess what? My kids spilled cereal yesterday and I did not freak out. I just cleaned it up. I didn't even feel that surge of emotion through me. That's what Splankna can do and does, you guys, amazingly frequently. It doesn't erase the memory, but it removes the emotional trapdoor that keeps hijacking your reactions. So who is Splankna helpful for? Here are some situations where Splankna is extremely helpful. Unresolved trauma, chronic anxiety, unexplained emotional reactions, feeling numb, people-pleasing tendencies, if you have a lot of fear-based thinking, childhood wounds, marriage conflicts, panic triggers, body-based trauma responses, emotional overwhelm, intrusive thoughts, spiritual heaviness, identity confusion, addictive habits, and any kind of grief or loss. And of course, that's not a comprehensive list, but basically anytime you know something's off inside of you, when you have that like, what is going on with me? Oh, I just don't feel like myself. I'm not acting like myself. I don't know how to stop this behavior, even though I know better. That is a great time to do Splankna. So recently we did an episode. I brought my friend Kendall on and she talked about talk therapy because she is a licensed therapist. And we talked about the difference of it, but I'm just going to briefly recap that here because some of you might have done years of talk therapy and you're very familiar with that world and you're trying to wrap your head around what would be different about it. So there's a huge distinction. Talk therapy uses the mind to heal the mind. It uses the conscious side of the mind, the part of your brain that remembers, the part of life that you can recall and be like, oh yeah, well, when I was 10, this happened. You can remember those things. Splankna uses the body to access the places that the mind can't reach. Another big difference in Splankna, the practitioner leads. You don't have to analyze yourself. You don't have to come up with insight. You don't have to explain the trauma in detail at all. You don't have to go deep into the story of what happened to you. Let's say something comes up that you haven't thought about in years. And the thought of talking about it and explaining it to someone and reliving that memory sounds like I could never. I want you to know in Splankna, you don't have to process the thing out loud in detail. General storylines work because the practitioner certainly doesn't need to know all the details. Your subconscious, which just brought up the traumatic event in your life anyway through muscle testing, knows exactly all the details. It already knows, and God already knows the details. So we just don't have to get into it. You don't have to be super self-aware to do Splankna, like connecting the dots or knowing why you do what you do. And you don't need to know what you need. The pressure is off of you. Your body does the talking. The practitioner leads. The protocol gives the structure, and Jesus brings the healing. I've had clients who barely have talked through a session. I've had a client that didn't talk at all during a session. It's not ideal, but they did have breakthrough from that session. They knew what was going on in their mind. I was checking in with them like, hey, do you think you know what we're working on? They nodded, and I muscle tested like, is this the trauma experience that we're working on? It tested as yes. I had no idea what we were checking, but the client knew exactly what we were working on. They just didn't want to talk about it. I've had clients who didn't even know what the original memory was, but their body remembered it perfectly. Think of it. If you're in a Splankna session and age 2 comes up, it's possible that you have no idea what happened at age 2 because your parents didn't tell you about it and you don't have conscious memory of age 2. We can do sessions on things that happened before you have conscious memory of it. So that's what makes Splankna so accessible, especially for people who shut down verbally or have difficulty expressing emotions. So that's Splankna in a nutshell. There's so much more to be said. That's what all the other episodes in this podcast are about. We do deep dives into so many of these topics. But overview of this modality, it's Christ-centered, mind-body connected, emotionally powerful, spiritually grounded, and incredibly practical. If you've been carrying emotional pain for years, if you keep getting triggered and you don't know why, if you feel stuck, numb, anxious, or overwhelmed, Splankna might be the tool that God uses to bring breakthrough. I would encourage you, just pray about it. Ask Him, is this something you have for me? Check for that peace in your heart. If you're feeling led to try a Splankna session, it will come with this feeling in your heart of peace when you pray about it. You're seeking the Lord, you're asking Him to give you guidance, and follow that. I would just encourage you to follow His lead on that. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who's been curious about Splankna or who might be ready for a session. Practitioners are all over the country. This modality has been around for about 26 years at the time I'm recording this. So you can get on the website splankna.com, type in your zip code, and it will show you some practitioners in your area. If you don't have one, then you can look for a practitioner listed who is listening prayer certified. That just means they can do virtual appointments. And yes, those are just as powerful as in person. They do not use any kind of muscle testing. I've heard some amazing testimony stories about that. In fact, a couple episodes ago, I believe maybe 2 episodes ago, I brought Lisa Bright on and she talks all about listening prayer Splankna. So you can do a deep dive into that if you'd like. Last thing I'll say is I have new clients come in all the time and they'll say things like, I almost didn't come. I was so nervous. I am so nervous. I have no idea what's going to come up. There seems to be a lot of nerves and intensity around that first session. And 9.5 times out of 10, they leave. And it's this oh, that wasn't bad. I actually really liked that. So if you're in that category, I would encourage you to give it a try. It is not as intense, not as overwhelming as you might be expecting. God is a gentle, kind healer, and He meets people so kindly in these sessions. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being here. I'm Laura Milliken, and I'll see you in the next episode.